They had indoor plumbing 1,000 years before Rome existed. Multi-story buildings, flush toilets, paved roads. This was Bronze Age Crete, and it shouldn't have been possible. Then one day, every palace burned. Their language died. And for 400 years, silence. 3 advanced civilizations, each one mysteriously collapsing, leaving only ruins and questions. Let's start with the strangest one. Year 1900, British archaeologist Arthur Evans buys a plot of land on Crete. Starts digging, and within weeks, he's standing in a palace that rewrites history. The Palace of Knossos. 5 acres, multiple stories, over 1,000 rooms. But here's what's bizarre. No fortifications, no walls, no weapons in the art. This civilization, the Minoans, built like they'd never heard of war. Look at what they painted. Dolphins, flowers, acrobats leaping over bulls for sport. While everyone else in the Bronze Age was depicting battles, the Minoans were drawing garden parties. Their plumbing system? More advanced than most of medieval Europe. Clay pipes brought fresh water in. Drains took waste out. Stone bathtubs. Flushing toilets. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. So here's the question. How do you build a civilization this sophisticated without armies? How do you stay this peaceful for 500 years? The answer is control. Not of people, of the sea. The Minoans had the Bronze Age's most powerful navy. They didn't need walls because invaders couldn't reach the shore. They traded across the Mediterranean. Olive oil, saffron, wine, and grew impossibly wealthy. Their palace wasn't a fortress. It was a warehouse, a temple, and an administrative center all in one. They kept meticulous records on these clay tablets. We call the script Linear A. Problem is, we still can't read it. We have thousands of tablets, and they're complete gibberish to us. But we know what they were tracking. Grain, oil, livestock. The Minoans were organized. Every jar of oil had a number. Every shipment had a seal. And in the center of it all was the bull leaping ceremony. Picture this. A massive courtyard, crowds watching. A bull charges. And a teenager, maybe 16 years old, runs straight at it, grabs its horns, and flips over its back while it's moving. This wasn't just entertainment, it was ritual. Youth and courage. The whole Minoan worldview in one terrifying performance. And then, everything ends. Around 1450 BC, fire rips through Knossos. We don't know if it was an earthquake, an invasion, or a revolution. But the palace burns. The tablets stop. The art disappears. Some Minoans survive and rebuild for a generation or two. But the Golden Age is over. And from across the Aegean, a new power is watching. A power that believes in walls. The Mycenaeans were everything the Minoans weren't. These are the walls of Mycenae, limestone blocks so huge that later Greeks thought giants built them. They called them Cyclopean, built by one-eyed monsters, because no human should be able to move stones this size. This is architecture as intimidation. The Mycenaean kings ruled from fortified citadels on hilltops. Everything was about power, hierarchy, control. Where the Minoans painted dolphins, the Mycenaeans painted warriors. Inside the palace at Pylos, you'd enter the Megaron, the throne room. A circular hearth burned at the center. 4 painted columns held up the roof. The king sat at the far end, watching everyone who entered. This is where loyalty was tested, where alliances were made or broken. Around that fire, Warriors in bronze armor swore oaths. Envoys reported on rival kingdoms. Feasts reinforced the social order. The Mycenaeans kept records too, but in a different script, Linear B. And unlike Linear A, we can read this one. It was cracked in 1952, and here's what shocked everyone. Linear B is Greek, early Greek, which means the Mycenaeans were the ancestors of classical Greece. But the tablets aren't recording poetry or philosophy. They're inventories, lists of weapons, chariots, personnel. One tablet from Pylos lists 400 women working as textile laborers. Another tracks bronze allocated to smiths for spearheads. This was a warrior culture obsessed with control and preparation. They were constantly fortifying, constantly arming, constantly watching the horizon, because something was coming. Around 1200 BCE, what archaeologists call the Late Bronze Age collapse, everything falls apart. Palaces burn from Greece to Egypt. Trade routes collapse. Empires crumble. We don't fully understand why. Climate change, maybe. Invasions. Internal rebellions. Probably all three. Pylos burns. Mycenae is abandoned. The great citadels fall silent. And for the next 400 years, Greece enters a dark age. Writing disappears. Monumental architecture stops. Population crashes. It's like someone hit the reset button on civilization. But the stories survive. Generations later, people will tell tales about great kings who lived behind massive walls, about treasures buried in tombs, about a war fought over a woman named Helen. The Mycenaeans become myths. 500 years after the collapse, Greece wakes up. But it's completely different. No more palaces, no more kings. Instead, city-states. Independent polis, each governing itself. And the most ambitious one is Athens. Athens in the 5th century BCE is where Western philosophy, democracy, and drama are being invented. This is the Greece everyone thinks of first. But here's what's wild. They're building on ruins they don't understand. The Athenians can still see Mycenaean walls. Massive, ancient, mysterious. They make up stories about them. Cyclops, heroes, lost ages of gold. They don't realize they're looking at their own ancestors. And their architecture reflects a completely new worldview. The Parthenon, built on the Acropolis between 447 to 432 BCE. And every single line is designed around one principle: correcting human perception. The columns aren't straight. They bulge slightly in the middle so they look straight from below. The floor isn't flat. It curves up so it doesn't appear to sag. The corner columns are thicker because they're backlit by sky. This is architecture as mathematics, as philosophy. The Athenians believed the universe operated on rational principles, and their buildings should reflect that. Meanwhile, in the agora, the marketplace, something unprecedented is happening. Citizens are gathering to debate. Not nobles, not priests. Regular guys arguing about laws, ethics, taxes. Democracy is messy and chaotic and constantly on the verge of collapse. But it's theirs. Then, in 431 BCE, war breaks out. The Peloponnesian War, Athens versus Sparta. Spartan troops surround the city. Thousands of refugees crowd inside the walls. And then plague hits. Within 2 years, a third of Athens is dead, including Pericles, their greatest leader. Socrates walks these streets during the plague, asking questions. What is virtue? What is justice? How should we live? The Athenians don't have palaces anymore. They don't have kings. But they have ideas. And those ideas, democracy, philosophy, rational inquiry, those survive the war. Those reshape the world. By 320 BCE, Greece has changed again. Power moves north to Macedonia, and one man changes everything: Alexander the Great. In just 13 years, Alexander conquers everything from Greece to India. The known world is suddenly Greek, or at least Greek-influenced. This is the royal palace at Aigai, Alexander's ancestral home, and it's unlike anything we've seen so far. It's not a fortress like Mycenae. It's not a temple complex like Knossos. It's a statement. Marble colonnades, mosaic floors depicting hunts and gods, banquet halls that open to the sky. This is architecture as theater, designed to impress diplomats, intimidate rivals, and display wealth. The Hellenistic period, the era after Alexander, is when Greek culture goes global. Cities from Egypt to Afghanistan are built with Greek columns, Greek theaters, Greek gymnasiums. But it's not pure anymore. It's blending with Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions. Greek becomes a common language across 3 continents. Philosophy mixes with Eastern mysticism. The palace at Vergina represents this fusion. It takes the Minoan love of open courtyards, the Mycenaean sense of authority, and the Athenian logic of proportion, and scales it up to empire size. This is the last evolution. After this, Greece becomes part of Rome. The culture survives, but the independence is gone. So let's zoom out. 3,000 years, 4 civilizations: Minoans, Mycenaeans, Classical Greeks, Hellenistic Greeks. Each one rises, reaches incredible heights, then collapses or transforms. But each one builds on what came before. The pattern is this: civilizations don't die completely. They leave traces, stories, ruins, ideas, and sometimes those traces are enough to rebuild something new. The Greece we know: philosophy, democracy, drama. That's just the surface. Underneath are layers of lost worlds, palaces without walls, kings behind stone, dark ages and rebirths. Before the gods of Olympus, before the myths, there were real people building real worlds, and their stones are still here, waiting to tell us who they were.